Hey, welcome back to another episode of Parker's Pensées. I'm your host, Parker Sedecase, and this is a podcast where we explore all the deepest ideas in philosophy, theology, nature, and life. I really love thinking about cool stuff, so come think with me. In this episode, I have with me once again Joe Schmid, and we're going to be talking about the books that helped us learn philosophy, books that most influenced us, books that we think will be influential and helpful for others. Um, Whatever, something like that. We have stacks and stacks of our favorite philosophy books, and we're going to talk about them with you guys. Before I jump in, though, I want to thank everyone who's making this podcast happen over on Patreon. If you like this podcast, if you love this podcast, then please consider becoming a Patreon patron. You can find the link in the show notes, description, wherever you're getting this podcast at. Another way you can support the podcast, if you don't want to become a patron, or if you are a patron and you're just desperate for more ways to support the podcast, if you look down here somewhere, you can find, I think it's over here somewhere, a super thanks. Looks like a heart, super thanks button. And if you like this episode, you can just give a super thanks and show some love, support the show. That would be huge. All right. Well, without further ado, let's bring Joe in and let's just let it rip on some philosophy books. Joe, thanks again for coming back on the podcast.
Yeah, dude, I'm super excited for this. Like you said, we have stacks of books next to us, and yeah, I mean, I think I was just thinking to toot my own horn. I'm rivaling Taylor Sear, aren't I, for most times coming on your channel?
Yeah, that's right. That's
So
right. You guys are
watch out,
battling.
Taylor. I'm coming for you.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, dude, so you just graduated, man. Congrats, by the way. That's
Thank you,
huge.
thank you. Yeah.
I can't talk about all your accomplishments because it would take the rest of the episode because you did so much. But congrats, man. That's huge. And so I thought it'd be awesome to get your thoughts on some of the books that were influential for you, and not just in college, but I mean, you came into college with some good philosophical acumen already on your belt. So let's let it rip, dude. Let's talk about some books that helped us, starting with history of philosophy. You got any in that category?
I do. Okay, so my first two are, well, this is actually kind of like a volume set or whatever, but
Yeah,
it's Frederick Copleston's books
for
for
sure.
the history of philosophy. So
For
I just
sure.
pulled out two of them right here. This one's got, well, this one looks like early modern, and then this one looks like ancient Greece and Rome. So yeah, anyway, definitely Frederick Copleston stuff is, I guess, unbeatable, really. And
Yeah.
then I wrote down two others, which were Audible books that I listened to. So like while cycling and running and so on. So one of them was A.C. Grayling's The History of Philosophy.
Yeah.
And then another one, which has received some criticism, and rightly, but it's still pretty good. It's Bertrand Russell's A History of Western Philosophy.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's definitely received some criticism, and
for sure.
rightly so. But yeah, and then finally a shout out before I turn it over to you for this one, the History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps podcast. So
Oh yeah.
that's such a great podcast for history of philosophy. So anyway, those are my picks for this one.
Yeah. I made the mistake of going all the way back to the beginning with that one, and it was before he's been doing it forever, Peter Adamson. And it's hard to listen to because it's like if you were listening back then it'd be totally fine, but now we all have better mics and we have editing stuff. So but he actually has turned those into books too for the listener.
Yeah,
And I don't think they're that expensive. I can't remember. But they're good. They're really, really good books, and a good podcast for free too. So yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I like that one. I was gonna pick those. I haven't read his book, and I stopped with the podcast. And Copleston, I have them. They look so cool and they're so good, and everyone tells me they're the best. I just haven't like cracked them, so I didn't want to be like disingenuous with
Oh,
that.
I haven't read all of the volumes, but the stuff from Cobblestone that I have read, yeah, it seems unparalleled in terms of history of philosophy.
Yeah, yeah. I hear that from like every philosopher, which is awesome. So I picked ones that were like really influential for me. I'm gonna get some heat for this one, I think, but it's A History of Philosophy and Theology by John Frame. And it's this big old thick old book. You kind of have to understand like his triperspectival way of doing things, but it's really dense, really thick, a good overview of a lot of philosophers and theologians, and it shows kind of the interplay between philosophers and theologians throughout history, which I thought was really cool. People are not going to like that one if you're not like a Christian at all. I also picked I kind of had to, just like Plato's
Of
dialogues.
course, yeah.
Some of those are really, really, really good. Like I love Euthyphro, and I say Gorgias, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
Gorgias. Yeah, I've heard people pronounce it
Gorgias.
different, but I think it's,
Yeah,
well, at least I say Gorgias, but
yeah,
people pronounce it differently.
yeah. Well, Euthyphro was huge for me because I remember hearing that problem in 6th grade at lunch. People brought up this Euthyphro dilemma, and I was like, oh, sick. And so that was really influential for me. And then I threw in some like classics, like, hey, if you want to know the history of philosophy, you should probably read some of these.
Oh, the primary material, dude. I didn't prepare
Yeah.
those, but I actually have some on
Sorry,
my
man.
desk here. So no,
Yeah.
it's fine. After you say yours, I'll go through some of the classics that I have on my desk.
Awesome, perfect. So you got Plato. I didn't do much Aristotle. Sorry, everyone, but Nick Ethics, like, go in. Everyone has to read that. But dude, I love Descartes. Descartes' my
Oh
guy.
yes,
I
dude,
absolutely
he's
love
so
Descartes.
nice. It's so nice to list, like, to read. It's like it flows really nicely. He's a good writer, and it's really accessible too. So yeah,
totally. And you can like chew on his ideas. Sometimes you hear him critiqued, I don't know, by modern folks or whatever. Like, we don't believe this stuff anymore. It's like, go wrestle with it yourself. Go see. Like, it's fascinating. Is he really saying that? I always hear everyone talk about meditations, but my favorite actually discourse on the method, just a shorter little punchy version, I would say. I also picked Pascal's Pensées. This is
yeah, I have that one next to me as well.
This is Pensées. My podcast is Pensées. But it's just so good, man. It's like, this is kind of what you imagine philosophy being. They are kind of like gnomic statements. I think it was supposed to be an apologetics book, but he didn't finish. But there are some pretty good arguments in here, I think, too. And people have gone on to develop them. So philosophy of religion type stuff as well. I think you'll probably have this one close. But St. Augustine's Confessions.
Dude, I just pulled that one up. This
I
is
knew
like
it.
one of
Yeah,
my
I
favorites.
figured you would.
Oh,
I saw you
yes.
posting about it this year.
Yes, look at that. I love it.
So good. I've been trying to read it once a year. You can't see my notes and stuff pop up, but love it. And I need to work on different translations as well. And then Marcus Aurelius Meditations.
Interesting.
I think that's another like philosopher one where you're like,
I haven't read that one.
Can
you tell me about that one? Just tell me about some of the contents.
For sure. So he is it's debatable whether he is or not, but now I'm forgetting the word. He's a Stoic, but this is all contested. But he's got these great lines where he's like, he's writing himself a journal for life, and he's saying, hey, meditate on these before you when you wake up, before you go out into the city. Know that people are going to be irascible, and they're going to be they're going to mess with you and all sorts of stuff, but be cool, man. You can't control that stuff, but you can control your inner life. He kind of contradicts himself on some stuff, but it's his personal diary that he's reading to meditate on. So he's not trying to like publish the end of philosophy. Or
Sounds like
that.
He's the original 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
Going around calling people bucko and
that's right. Yeah, right here. Yeah, and line 12, bucko. There you go. So.
And the lobsters.
Yeah, he tosses in some stuff on Logos, I believe, which is fun. But it's just like, that's what a lot of public people think philosophy is. So go ahead and read it. That's awesome. Yeah, do that. Okay, and then the last two. This one I doubt a lot of people will know about, but it's called the Syntopicon, and it's 2-part series. It's actually like the beginning of this set that I have back here, the great works of the Western tradition. And this is mostly, I believe, by Mortimer Adler, but he probably had a team on it. But it's an encyclopedia of the great ideas. So he says there's 102 great ideas, like man and world and knowledge, matter, mind, poetry. Like it's the stuff that philosophers mess with. And Adler was big on education and said, if you can't successfully talk about those intellectually, then you may not be educated yet. So grapple with the great ideas, and it's kind of a history of ideas tradition. I love these. Yeah, these are really good.
Yeah, some of these, it's so underrated reading these sorts of like the primary material from these like historical philosophers. That's so underrated. Totally. At least for me, I don't know. I've always been exposed to these more contemporary like introductions and like papers and articles and journals.
Yeah,
like, that's been my primary education. Now, thankfully, I've been able to take history of philosophy classes at Purdue, and we go to the primary material. That's why I have a lot of these. But I found that it's a really good source of wisdom and so on. So yeah, I did bring up my Confessions. That's has to be on there because it's one of my favorites. It was really, really good. We read that with Jeff Brower in one of our medieval philosophical theology classes. It was a philosophy class, but so of course I've got here Anselm's Proslogion, or some say Proslogion. Now, people only know this for the ontological argument. There's so much in here that's really good. I honestly love the first chapter, arousing of the mind to the contemplation of God. I want to read the first paragraph. Just because, I mean, you don't even have to like imagine, like, even if you're a non-theist, right? Instead of thinking like God, maybe, I don't know, put in some other ideal like philosophy or truth or virtue or something like that. So the first paragraph is, "Come now, insignificant mortal, leave behind your concerns for a little while and retreat for a short time from your restless thoughts. Cast off your burdens and cares. Set aside your labor and toil. Just for a little while, make room for God and rest a while in Him. Enter into the chamber of your mind." That's a quote from Matthew chapter 6, verse 6 or whatever. So enter into the chamber of your mind. Shut out everything but God and whatever helps you to seek Him, and seek Him behind closed doors. Speak now, my whole heart. Say to God, I seek your face. Your face, Lord, do I seek. So, and it's so interesting. And he talks about faith seeking understanding. Like, it's a really interesting book. And he goes through his philosophical theology. And this one also has Gonolo's replies. So anyway, that's really good.
Yeah.
The second one, and I haven't read this whole book here, but I've certainly read portions, and it's very good. David Hume's Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion.
Yeah,
It's a
that's a good one too.
for the like non-theistic criticisms of certain theistic arguments. So it's definitely a classic for that. Augustine's On Free Choice of the Will. This is very, very good. He has like in here like an ode to truth. Man, I have so many different underlines in here, but I forget. I won't be able to pull it out. But it was so good, and it was just so lovely. And yeah, this is where he contemplates about freedom and foreknowledge, and yeah, it's super interesting. Oh, I think I might have found it. Let's see. Yeah, you say something for the audience while I think I.
Yeah. Well, this is good because at the end we're going to talk about like public philosophy and something I've been wrestling with a lot lately. I've been trying so hard to be an analytic philosopher. But when I talk to people and say, "Hey, I'm studying to become a philosopher," they're all like, "Oh, so what do you think of the Meditations? Or what do you think about Nietzsche?" And I'm like, "Oh no, dude, like that's not really what I'm trying to study." But I've just been changing my mind on this, and I'm thinking I want to do it all. I want to be a philosopher. Like I want to be able to talk about Anselm's ontological argument in his own words, and I want to be able to talk about modern conceptions of that and how it's in its analytic form. I just want it all. I don't want to have to be like, "Oh, sorry, I study modal logics, and so I can't talk to you about whoever."
Yeah.
So I'm stoked. I'm stoked that we're talking about these kind of folks too.
Yeah. So I don't think I found the specific passage, but here's just one line. What is more fragrant, more delightful than the gentle breath of truth? It's like that's the sort of thing that you're getting with Augustine. You might not think it, but it's like it's this poetic brilliance. I mean, it's so good. And then my final one that I had on that. Oh no, I had two more. One of them is actually up there behind me. It is George Berkeley's A Treatise Concerning the Principles of Human Knowledge.
Oh yeah,
super interesting.
Yeah.
Like actually rigorous arguments for idealism. Like super interesting. And he's a good writer. It's enjoyable.
Yeah.
And then finally, Boethius, The Consolations of Philosophy.
Oh man, that's good.
It's so good. It's so good. Talks about fortune and fate and how like happiness is in goodness and these like unchangeable things. It's great. Anyway.
And he wrote it in prison, which is
he wrote it in prison, and then there's this embodiment of philosophy, like lady philosophy, and it's super. There's so much symbolism in it that you could just reflect on it, like the different colors that are at play, like the different word. Like there are certain, I think phi is written on her somewhere, and then T for truth or something. It's really interesting.
I love that symbolism. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbolism as well.
Yeah, I mean you're pretty good at that. People absolutely love your existential quantifier shirt. So you got your own thing there.
Oh yeah, exactly. Okay, well that's my stuff for history.
Awesome.
Maybe we can move on to philosophy in general.
Yeah. So in philosophy in general, I was thinking for me, I was thinking things that have helped me learn to do philosophy and have given me kind of a picture of what I want, the kind of philosopher I want to be. So let me jump in first on these, and then we'll hear yours. Actually, no, I just talked.
We can take turns doing.
Yeah, we can take turns. We can take turns. That's good. Here's one that I picked that's really interesting. That was really influential on me. It's by Richard Weaver. Ideas Have Consequences.
I've never heard of this one.
Yeah, so he was a rhetorician at Chicago, and kind of from what I gather, kind of this crotchety old curmudgeon, but he was bemoaning the turn to subjectivism in like I think this is 1948. And so he's talking about a transcendent reality. And basically, he's a Platonist, but he's also a rhetorician, so he writes really, really well. And this was one of the first that just kind of got me into philosophy and showed me that I want to be able to write in a way that's intriguing, that draws people in, but doesn't take the cookies down from the top shelf, but brings the reader up to the top shelf. And so this is just a really, really rich one. It's good. I really like him. And if for those who do know Richard Weaver and in the rhetorician school, they're like, yes, someone finally mentioned him. So there's a little nod to them.
Dude, the rhetoricians are kind of owning it right now because Augustine was a rhetorician. So
that's right.
That's one of the reasons why he's so good at writing and why you guys should read Augustine.
Totally. Yeah.
In my theist tier list, I had Augustine as number 1.
Oh, dude.
Tier, so yeah.
As number 1, you said?
Yeah, in the S tier, number 1 in the S tier. So.
Huge. Yeah.
I'm a big Augustine fan, even though I don't like his stuff on eternal conscious torment and so on. But set that aside.
Sure. Yeah. All right, let's get one of yours.
Okay, yeah. Well, I have a lot for this one just because this is one of my passions, helping people think critically in the context of philosophy. So we can go through a number of mine. It's not too many, but I can go through them quickly. So anyway, yeah. I'll just... So the first two that I had, it's like a companion. It's Philosophy 1 and Philosophy 2. Philosophy 1 is a guide through the subject, and Philosophy 2 is further through the subject.
Is that first one A.C. Grayling?
Yeah, these are both. Well, it's edited by A.C. Grayling.
Okay, I got the first one.
Yeah. So what they have in here is like, oh my goodness, it's basically they're almost book length in their own right, but it's an edited collection, and this was meant for, I think, the students for. It's basically like a map of the philosophical terrain. And it basically is supposed to be precisely a guide through philosophy for beginners. And there are extended essays here, and they're commissioned from leading philosophers, and they're surveying major areas and the various arguments and debates therein. And so Philosophy 1, which is this one, it has epistemology, philosophical logic, philosophy of science, metaphysics, philosophy of mind. And again, these are not no names. It's David Papineau, Tim Crane, and so on. So ethics, aesthetics, and then the next one they have philosophy of religion, philosophy of mathematics. So anyway, this was actually designed for, I think, it was either Oxford students, I forget precisely, but it was designed for their courses. And it's just so good. Both of those, they get people in philosophy really, really well.
Yeah.
So those are my first two. The next one is, of course, Knowledge, Reality, and Value by Michael Huemer.
Awesome,
I absolutely love this one. It was so good. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like, it's sort of... most people who are kind of entrenched in philosophy have already covered a lot of this terrain, but this is so good for someone who really wants to see, like, what is philosophy? How do you think philosophically? And I don't know, Huemer is just such a great writer, and he goes through so many different chapters, goes through epistemology, metaphysics, and like things that are actually interesting to people. So he talks about like the interesting questions, like, can we survive past death? Do we have free will? Does God exist? And these sorts of things. Yeah. In addition to helping people think critically, right? The first few chapters are about philosophy and thinking critically.
Yeah.
So
he's such a special case because he is a top philosopher. I've heard people say he's the best living. That's totally debatable and all that stuff, but but he's really, really good. And his Bayesian stuff, he just lets it rip, and he can still write at the public level, and he still writes a ton of blog articles and stuff. So that's a really good one because he can do both. I love that.
Yeah, that's so wonderful as well. And that's what we are kind of trying to do with our respective shows or podcasts or whatever. We're trying to bring it down now. We don't always, or at least I don't always succeed in that. Sometimes it's way too heady. The next one is a timeless one, The Philosopher's Toolkit, of course. This is the, I had to get the updated edition, the 3rd edition, just because I really liked it. And exactly. This is one of the books that kind of really got me into philosophy.
Same.
And I know we have later, we'll talk about what books got us into philosophy of religion, so I've also got some for that. But this is one of the ones that got me into philosophy. Again, it's all about like the toolkit, about critical thinking in the context of philosophy, which of course brings us to the majesty of reason, of course. I do recommend people, I guess I'd recommend some other books before this one because it does get a little bit technical at certain points, but this really can help people sharpen their critical thinking toolkits, specifically in the context of philosophy. And then I just have two more. One of them is, this one is so unique, Just the Arguments, 100 of the Most Important Arguments in Western Philosophy. So basically, these guys were just like, cut the crap. Like, there are so many interesting philosophical arguments that you'd have to like wade through a bunch, like, I don't know, a lot of tangential material and so on. And so what they do is they condense it down. They get a bunch of different specialized scholars in these different areas. So on Aquinas' 5 Way, they have Tim Paul, right? And so they're basically, they have the Youthful Dilemma. What they do is they give the arguments in like really rigorous format, and it's like just the arguments with a little bit of commentary on the justifications for the premises. So part 1 is philosophy of religion. They have Aquinas' 5 ways, the contingency argument, the kalam, the ontological argument, Pascal's wager, problem of evil, free will defense, all this sort of stuff. Then they have metaphysics. So they got like McTaggart, they've got idealism, Lewis and possible worlds, personal identity, ship of Theseus. They've got epistemology in here. They've got everything, ethics.
Joe, how rigorous are the formulations of those arguments?
Yeah, let me get an example. So I'll just bring up Tim Paul's chapter.
Sure.
We're talking quite rigorous. So let me just show you this. I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah.
So premise 1, there is an ordered series of efficient causes. Premise 2, necessarily, if X is an efficient cause of Y, then X is prior to Y. Conclusion 1, necessarily, if X is an efficient cause of X, then X is prior to X, which follows from instantiation in premise 2. Then premise 3. So you can see.
Yeah. That's great, dude.
It's really good.
When you first said it, I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. But no, it's like it's a legit book. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is these are like actual scholars in the field. So this is very good, and it's Wiley Blackwell. I absolutely love that. And then the final one is David Papineau, Philosophical Devices. I cannot recommend this. I cannot recommend this any further. It's so good. Proofs, probabilities, possibilities, and sets. So basically, like, this is, if you want to read like philosophy papers, like you're going to want to read this because it talks about, okay, here's the basics of set theory. Okay, here's what a set is. Here's what set membership is. Here's Russell's paradox. Here's the axiom of comprehension and those sorts of things. And then here's the basics of infinity. So what you need to understand to get into these sorts of debates. Then it talks about necessity and like, what is a possible world? What are these different things? What are these different kinds of possibilities? And then it talks about probability. So certain like basic things that you need to know to get into probability, like Bayes' theorem and updating degrees of belief and conditionalization. And then it goes into logic. So the distinction between syntax and semantics, syntactic consequence, semantic consequence. It's really good. And it's actually not like super duper unintelligible or anything like that. Like he's very good at explaining, David Papineau. So
yeah.
That's my stuff. Sorry, I know that was long, but
no, that's great. That's great. Papineau was on my list as well. I think I left it upstairs, but I just have been reading that myself. And after talking about philosophy of math with Mark Collivan and checking out like mathematical philosophy versus philosophical mathematics, just Papineau kind of nailed the nail in the coffin to show like analytic philosophy uses the tools of math. Here's what's up. Like, just get these down and you will have a better time. Just get these under, and when you understand them, it opens up a lot of different doors for you. So I really like Papineau's
It lays the foundations really well. Like a lot of people go into this stuff and like, well, I don't know. It defines. It's so nice to have one place where it's like it's defining what a set is. It's defining set membership. It's defining Bayes'
and
theorem.
It's concise, super concise.
It's concise. Yeah, exactly. Like this is a small book. Like look at it, people, and he covers a lot of stuff in here. And
definitely,
so,
yeah, huge one. I also, I guess I forgot Ted Sider's book, but Logic for Philosophy.
That's a must. That's a must for people who,
Another one that's just like a lot of inside baseball type stuff where you're like, what? Oh, that's why they say that. Oh, because sometimes you go through different logic books and people just pick different symbols for different things or different sets of symbols, right? And you're like, well, why is the U? Why is that? Okay. Oh, but if you understand set theory, now you understand why they're using that. And they didn't want to tell you about set theory because they thought they were helping you out in the other logic books, but they actually didn't really help you out. They just gave you the symbol to use without understanding.
Yeah.
So Ted Sider's is another one that I thought was awesome. Life's Ultimate Questions by Ronald Nash. It's an older book. There we go. This one is actually the opposite probably of just the arguments. This one is showing kind of like a worldview analysis, and that word is super loaded and controversial, but he wrote this like in the 80s. So, or no, maybe it's 99, but still we can forgive him. But he goes over things like naturalism. And then he looks at like Plato, Aristotle, Aquinas, Augustine, Plotinus. But then he introduces you into things like the law of non-contradiction, possible worlds, epistemology. He's got 3 chapters on epistemology. Then he started getting into proofs for God's existence and such, and showing how your beliefs affect other beliefs. And so that's what he's getting at. When he says worldview, he means like just the propositions, right? I'm cognitive. I have another word for it, but I'm drawing a blank on it right now. Schema. It'll come back to me. But this is a pretty good one. I like this one. I think it might pair really well with just the arguments because you're getting to see a full picture of someone, but you're also getting, if you just go with just the arguments, a pared down version.
Yeah, that's what all like these. A lot of these are complementary to each other because it's like this one will philosophical devices will give you a lot of the basics for like the formalisms used, and then just the arguments is going to be able to help you like really winnow down and get like these are actually like it says the most important arguments in Western philosophy. So it's like you're going to find the experience machine in here. You're going to find like these sorts of things in here. It's going through some of these famous arguments like Ship of Theseus and other sorts of things. And combine that with all the other ones where it's like a lay of the land of philosophy, where it's like this is what ethics is about. These are the questions that they ask. So like all of these together, people can mix and match, and they should mix and match if they want to get deeper into these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So yeah,
definitely. I got to say it again. The Philosopher's Toolkit was really good, and again, giving you language to use when you're talking with other philosophers.
It's like a conceptual empowerment. That's how I kind of think of it. It's allowing you to be able to wield these things and clarify your own thinking and the thinking of the contexts in which you find yourself. So
yeah, I also learned like when you do have, say that word again. What was the phrase you just used?
Conceptual empowerment.
Yeah, that's nice, dude. When you have conceptual empowerment, it's just using shorthand. So instead of saying like the theory of knowledge, being like, what epistemology or epistemologically, and it's like, if you heard from the outside, you might think they're just trying to sound smart. But when you actually get inside, you realize I don't want to say the full sentence. I'm going to use the shorthand words for different things.
Yeah, but also once you have a word for that, I don't know, like it opens you up. Like some people, when they talk about, for instance, the moral argument, right? They confuse the moral epistemology with the moral ontology. Like they'll be like on both sides, but let's just pick one side. When an atheist is responding to the moral argument, be like, "Oh no, atheists can easily know what's right and wrong." Like, "Oh, you're saying that atheists are immoral?" Like, but the thing is, like, once you have these concepts, you can distinguish between the moral epistemology, how we come to have epistemic access to the facts, and the moral ontology, like the very nature of those facts out there in reality.
Right.
So it's empowering in that sense. You now can make that distinction between the epistemic side of things and the ontological side of things, and that comes up in a bunch of different contexts. So.
And when you're talking with someone who also recognizes those concepts, you can move way faster.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to explain, and you don't have to look like a douche either. Because like when someone doesn't, it's really hard to not look like a douche. Like, I think you're confusing the ontology and the epistemology here. I don't want to like belittle you or anything like that, but like I think that's what's going on, and it's just difficult. It's more difficult when we're not all speaking the same language. Another one I got on here is Philosophical Foundations.
I love that one. Okay, it sounds weird.
Second edition.
Sorry, I need to interject, but I actually do really like that one. I mean, there are portions that I don't like some of the arguments for God's existence I find, and the chapters I find somewhat biased, and they don't cover some of the strong objections. They don't engage with some of the best material that criticizes it and so on. So I definitely do have reservations about it, but overall, it is a good book that I still recommend to people because it does give you like the basics of logic, the basics of critical thinking, and so on. And so it is good in that sense. So anyway, I just wanted to say I do like that one, and I listened to that like twice on Audible. So
nice. Yeah, and this is the second edition. I haven't seen a ton of the like updates that they've made. I cut my teeth on the first one, and I was coming at it back in the day when I was like hardcore pre-supper. So I was like, I don't know about William Lane Craig. So I also had my reservations, which changed now. But just as an overview, if you wanted a one-stop shop for getting deep into philosophy, like this is the place to start. Just eat the meat and spit the bones. Learn to be a philosopher along the way and challenge their arguments as well. What else we got? Okay, I got a couple more here. This might be a hot take. This might be spicy, but it's one of my favorite books, Modern Philosophy by Roger Scruton. Do you know about Roger Scruton? I never know if anyone knows about him.
I've heard of him. Yeah, isn't he the conservative philosopher? Like,
see, that's all people
I know. Like the harbinger of conservatism.
Yeah, that's kind of how he got big. But I believe he did his PhD under Peter Strawson on like the ethics or like the nature of beauty, and at that time that was like the resurgence of Kantian transcendental arguments and stuff over there. So he was big into Kant, and he really helped me understand what Kant was getting at. But this book is like another inside baseball. Not so much as like the technical stuff, but just knowing like what are people talking about. He goes in really deep. He's another really, really good author. He'll give you all the arguments. But for me, this was so huge in just knowing the figures, like who's Fichte, and so it's kind of a history of philosophy. but it's the modern period, and he does a good job of he's a little biased for sure. Like he goes in on planning and his ontological argument and stuff, but awesome. I think it's a really amazing book, and I commend it because a lot of people just see Sir Roger Scruton as like the politics guy, but he's a philosopher in his own right. Yeah, and I do really love that book. Another one would be this was a newer one to me just recently, but The Philosophy of Philosophy by Timothy Williamson.
Oh yeah,
and it's a thick old book, and this is like how to do philosophy. Like I think Williamson and Humer are so good because their scope. Like they're also really good in all these individual fields, but they're like philosophers, man. You ask them about stuff, they'll have opinions on it. I don't know. There's not a whole ton where they'd go like, "Oh, that's not, I shouldn't speak on that." They're like, "No, let's go. I'll talk about that." So this book is actually it's pretty tough. Some parts are really tough if you're just getting into philosophy, but he's a good writer too. You'll learn. Like just take some more time and just slog through. It's a really good one. The Philosophy of Philosophy. I think that's a really cool idea. Like what is philosophy? Here we go. We're jumping in. So he's getting into I should say what he's doing here a little bit. He talks about like naturalism. What else is he getting in on? Experimental philosophy, which is this movement. I don't know if it's still like a strong movement or not, but he's getting in on that and saying like there was this whole idea of we need to get away from the armchair and we need to do like experiments and stuff. And he's like the bastion. He's like the I called him in our episode. I called him the apologist for armchair philosophy, because he's like it's just such rigorous philosophy from the armchair, and he's just defending that. He's saying we don't only have to do that, but we should be doing that. And the broad approach is an inference to the best explanation. I think that's like the main tool that he uses in his philosophy. So another one where it's just like getting in deeper on being a philosopher and seeing it done well.
That's good. Yeah.
And then this is kind of a combo, but Thomas Nagel, The Last Word, and The View from Nowhere. I want to be like Nagel. I want to be like him. He's just a great author. A really good thinker, super influential dude. Like so many different sub-disciplines were like, oh, this started because of a Nagel paper. So yeah, reading him is awesome. And then last but not least, I got this book by this mysterious author, The Majesty of Reason. Dude, this is a good book, man. This is our first conversation. I picked this up and we talked, and it's awesome, dude. I love it. This is one of your accolades from your just brief stint in undergrad.
It's wonderful that you put that on there, because I really hope it serves people. So yeah, wonderful.
Definitely, man. Love
now we could probably do we have philosophy of religion next?
Yes, and this will probably be like the big one.
You went first last time, so I'll go first this time.
Yeah. Yep.
So I know you asked what books kind of helped me get into philosophy of religion. So that's the first question. And then there's the distinction between like that and what helped us get into the weeds. So I guess we'll both just start with what helped us get into it. So the first one, and this is going back to like 7th, 8th grade, but 7th grade. So this is not like some hard-hitting philosophy book, people. But I read this when I was like in 7th grade, and it kind of changed my trajectory. So The Language of God by Francis Collins.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I know. So it's really interesting. Francis Collins, right? He's like the head of he was the head of the Human Genome Project that sequenced the human genome or whatever. And it's super interesting. He talks about firstly the relationship between science and faith. So that's part one, and he talks about his journey from atheism to theism, and then he talks about the part 2 is the great questions of human existence. So he talks about the origins of the universe, life on Earth, the human genome, and basically he goes through and he kind of develops. He argues for a harmony between science and faith, and he develops a kind of theistic evolutionist view, and he provides some really good criticisms of creationism and this like intelligent design views. And he's the founder, I think, of the Biologos organization, which is what this is really. I think this helped kind of launch it. It's associated with it. But anyway, when I was in 7th grade, like these were the questions that I was asking, because we were starting to learn about evolution and so on. So I was like, how does this interact with my faith and so on? So yeah, anyway, this book is definitely really influential in just shaping me and getting me into philosophy in the first place, in philosophy of religion specifically. And then I guess what also helped me get into philosophy of religion is my favorite intro to philosophy of religion, which is William Rowe's Intro to Philosophy of Religion.
Oh yeah,
He
sure.
has, I think it's just called Introduction to Philosophy of Religion, and that's my favorite intro. So those are the ones that I picked for that one. So I'll turn it over to you for what helped you get into it.
Yeah. Huge. So, what helped me get into it? I think I have to say C.S. Lewis's Miracles,
Ooh.
um, which I don't know, man. I don't know what you think about that. Have you read this one before?
Miracles. I don't think so. I've read Mere Christianity or
Sure.
whatever, but I don't think I've read Miracles.
Yeah. This is it's my favorite book by him. I try to read it at least once a year, and this is where he develops his argument from reason, which he doesn't say it's his, but came back from like William Balfour, and then before that, like it goes back. Everyone says it goes back to Plato, of course. You have to say that, but really good in the conversation that he develops between supernaturalism and naturalism. And I was like, I want to do this, and I would try out his argument from reason, and it's basically about look, if there are physical causes that give rise to our beliefs, then in some sense that's a self-defeating belief. And it's like, is that true? Is that true? Like, how can we think through that? Like the self-defeat arguments, I love trying to get in. Do they ever work? Is there actually one? Is there a difference between self-defeat and self-refutation? I love that kind of stuff. And my friends like hammer me and they're like, it's too quick. You just want a quick one. I'm like, no, it's just a sweet puzzle. You get in one of these weird spots when you get to self-reference type stuff. I love it. So that really opened up my mind to philosophy in general. But I started through thinking about this debate between naturalism and supernaturalism. He also goes on to do some really like cool, interesting philosophy. He talks about the Corn King and how if you think about like a pagan society and they're worshiping the Corn King and they're sacrificing to him, he's like, well, Christ is the Corn King. If you believe in God and he is the God of the universe, he actually is that Corn King. So let's think about this. And so it opened my mind to a lot of the philosophy of religion type stuff. And then like maybe even like the folk understanding of philosophy of religion, where it's like really comparative religions, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Unfortunately.
that would yeah, right. That's what everyone thinks philosophy of religion is. So that was a really big one that got me in. I put Mere Christianity on here. I used to hate this book. I loved his Miracles and I hated Mere Christianity. But then when I came to find out like what it is and the history behind it, and that he was going into Britain, he was going into London from the safety of Oxford, and while they were bombing London to give these broadcast talks. I'm like, that's super epic, dude. And then I started to appreciate some more of his stuff. So then just wrestling with this book also brought me in. So those are just the two that I think sucked me in pretty good. Oh, wait, one more. This is like an OG book, Faith and Rationality, Reason and Belief in God. This is Waltersdorf and Plantinga. They edit it, but who else is in here? This is just a super good one. George Mavrodes. Do you know that name at all?
I've heard of that name. Yes,
He's like, yeah, he's a legend, man. He's like real sneaky. He wrote a bunch of journal articles, and like one book or two books, but everyone like talked about him. So like you hear his name. He talked about the subjectivity of arguments. The relativity of proofs or something like that. Like, look, a proof isn't going to work on every person. There's a lot more to it than just here's a knockdown drag out argument for everyone. No, it's going to be relative to the person who's
the
hearing the proof.
person-specific nature of justification.
Yeah,
That's what
there we
Josh
go.
Rasmussen and I talk about that a lot.
Yeah. So that was like one of his really influential things. Yeah, he's just awesome. I love Mavrodes. He got some really weird essays in here, or there's like short stories and they don't fit in the book at all. And no one else has read the book, so I can't talk to them. If anyone else has read this book, what do you think about these short stories? They're so weird and it's so like opaque what the point is. But it just sucks you in. And then you get back to like Plantinga, who's like, man, Proposition 37. Here we go. So this one really sucked me in because I knew these names, like Waltersdorf and Plantinga, and I was like, okay, these guys are serious and they're taking this stuff really seriously, and I want to be like them.
All right. So the next one was what books helped us get it deep into the weeds.
Yeah.
So I don't have all of these in physical like a physical copy. A lot of them are digital. So, for instance, the number one here that helped me get into the weeds was Proust's "The Principle of Sufficient Reason: A Reassessment." That one was very big on my intellectual development. That one is what kind of steered my ship from metaphysical naturalism going back to agnosticism.
Wow. Okay.
So this is very big on my intellectual development, as is the next one, which is Proust and Rasmussen's book Necessary Existence.
That's so good.
Both of these kind of awakened me, as I've said this on other occasions, but they both awakened me from my dogmatic metaphysical naturalist slumbers, as Kant said with respect to Hume. So yeah, both of those they're so good. They're really well argued, and they're just like tip-top shape analytic philosophy. Is just beautiful.
Yeah,
I love it. Anyway, so those two.
Well, Joe, let me ask you about that. Did you? Josh knows that probably, right? Have you told him that before?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome. Did you ever like email him before you had your YouTube channel or anything like that?
Josh?
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yes. So
okay.
Yeah, when it was way back in, oh my goodness, I was in high school, maybe sophomore, maybe a junior, and I came across his Worldview Design channel somehow. I don't know how, but then I started binge watching his videos, and I was like, "Who is this person?" So I emailed this person with some objections to some of his modal arguments, and yeah, we went back and forth, and soon enough, it's hundreds of emails later, and we're really getting to know each other. And eventually, I was like, okay, well, I've got a lot of these sorts of thoughts, and I'm starting to really develop philosophically. I'm going to make a YouTube channel. So it was much earlier, actually, than my YouTube channel. It was like even I've had my blog. My blog used to have a different name, but I used to post certain things on my blog, and I'd share them with him, and he'd give comments. Anyway, it was super interesting. So yes, I definitely knew about Josh long before the YouTube.
That's huge. I didn't know that you guys had talked with each other before that. So it's Josh's fault here. Maybe he's a big part of that. That's so cool, man. I love that. I have a book and a story like that with someone too.
Yeah.
But yeah. Keep going on your list there.
Yeah. So Proust is definitely like as well really huge on my development as well. Two others that are on the non-theistic side that have really helped me appreciate the, I guess, robustness of the intellectual side of atheism, as it were, where Oppie's arguing about gods, this monolithic tome that goes through like most of the arguments for God's existence, as well as J.H. Sobel's Logic and Theism, which is just wonderful. Now, of course, at the time I didn't understand, when I read it at the time, I didn't understand all of it because it's got a lot of like proof stuff in there. It goes through ontological arguments, and you got like all these different premises, and I still didn't understand all of it, right? Because it's super duper technical logic. But in other points, it's like really good in critical engagement with arguments for God's existence and like novel criticisms and so on. Like, unlike lots of other authors, indeed, unlike Oppie in his book Arguing About Gods, like Sobel really took, for instance, Aquinas' arguments seriously, and he saw the distinctions that most critics don't, like the per se versus per accident series, and he just developed some really good criticisms.
That one's been in my cart forever, so I'm actually in my cart right now.
It's so good.
I need to pull the trigger on that.
It's one of my favorites, honestly. And then just a few more. One of them I've got right here next to me that helped me get deep is, of course, that's easy to say, Richard Swinburne, The Existence of God. This is a classic, of course, really well argued, and his Bayesian approach, the Bayes machine goes.
That's right.
So
that's right.
But he talks about intrinsic probability and explanatory power, and he doesn't give your kind of, I guess, vanilla kind of arguments in here. He's talking about arguments from consciousness and like a new cosmological argument that he's developed about structure and order of the universe and so on. So it's like he's such an original thinker, and he's just great. So it's not these like vanilla arguments that you hear apologists trot out one after another like on the internet. So it's really good. It's refreshing. And then another one that helped me, so just two more actually, in philosophy of religion that helped me get deep into the weeds were, of course, it's actually kind of recent, but 24 or so arguments for God, a really good collection of essays.
That's one of mine too. For sure.
Exactly. For sure. That develop really interesting, innovative arguments. And then the final one was, I don't have it in physical form, but it's really good. It is called Theism and Atheism, Opposing Perspectives in Philosophy. It's a ginormous book, and I have the PDF, and it's edited by Oppie and Kotursky. And what they have is like, I guess, a pro side and a con side, and it's all these different issues in philosophy of religion. Like, one of them is abstracta. So it's like pro for theism and abstracta, so someone would give like, I think, theistic conceptualist arguments and so on, and then the con side, so it would be like for atheism from abstracta. Felipe Leon actually wrote that chapter, and I had him on my channel to have that God and from Abstracta to Atheism video. It was based on that paper that he wrote for that book.
Awesome.
So, and like you have all these really good contributors. All these really good contributors on so many different things, cosmological arguments, teleological arguments. It's just so good, and religious experience. It's such a good book. So anyway, that I know it's a lot, but that's what helped me really get into the weeds. All those were super influential.
And this is kind of where you and I spend a lot of our time. So
yeah, philosophy, religion.
We're gonna and the audience will expect that too, which is huge. All right, so you done with your list there, Joe?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I'll jump in with Faith and Reason, Ronald Nash again. I just love Nash. Like, this dude's awesome. He's got a lot of audio lectures still on the Reformed Theological Seminary app, and he's just like this. The way he teaches is like, I want to be like him. He would like embody the person giving the argument, and so like so someone pushes back on the argument, and he goes, "Well, I don't believe that because I'm him today, whoever." And so like if he's William Rowe or whoever, he's like, I don't believe that. I don't buy your premises. I'm not Christian. Why would I do that? And it's just like, that's good, dude. He's like embodying that idea in order to give his students.
It helps with the intellectual empathy.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think he just does it comes out in his book, but he goes over teleological arguments and even like foundationalism, and he was big on planning us stuff with Reformed epistemology type stuff. But this one I commend it to people. This will help you get in deeper, and since it's like so old, I think they made a bunch of them. Like, you can get it really cheap online too. So I like that one. That helped me get in a little bit deeper. One that's like stupid rigorous that I really like is Philosophy of Religion by Keith Yandel.
Oh yeah, dude, that's such a good one for people who like an intro. So after I just want to interject. Sorry. After William Rowe, for which is my favorite intro, just because it's like a proper intro and it's really good. That one is probably my second, the one that I'd recommend people after Rowe. So
yeah, and I am so partial to this contemporary introduction Routledge series. Like, I have a bunch of them.
So good.
I really like them.
How is Routledge? Okay, I just want to say Routledge is really shining. They're shining above Oxford and Cambridge and Blackwell and so on, because this contemporary introduction series is unparalleled.
So good. And I don't know, I always forget how much they cost. Maybe like $50 or something like that. But like, I mean, Oxford books get up there too. So it's like these guys are just out, undercutting them and outproducing them. It's really good. Sorry, Oxford. If you want to support the podcast, I will change my mind for the right price. But Yandel's awesome, and he goes in on other religions too, so that's kind of nice. Like, he's a really, really good philosopher. I always kind of think of him as like PVI. I think of like those two, same energy. You know what I mean? Maybe PVI is better. I don't know about that, but same type of energy, and just problem of evil type stuff. If you want to take the next step if you want to level up, then this is a good one. I have the second edition. I don't know how many editions there are. I think it might just be 2, but this one,
I believe it's actually, I think it's 2. I think that's the latest one.
Okay. Another one helping me get in on philosophy of religion type stuff is The Hiddenness of God by Mike Ray. And I could have just as easily picked Schellenberg's book. And maybe I should have, because I got just all theists here and now I'm looking super biased. But I like Ray. I like his response, whether or not you think it's adequate. I like that he takes the theology seriously as well. He pulls in theology in, and that was kind of the first time for me seeing that you can do that. I always, I was under the impression that it was like you separate your theology and we're just using bare reason. But Ray helped me think through that kind of stuff, and it was really fun talking with him on the podcast about it too. So specific problems, right? So getting in on specific problems. This one's super special to me. It's C.S. Lewis. It's a Blackwell Great Minds book, but it's by Stuart Getz, and I was super hardcore in on the argument from reason and the transcendental argument in presuppositionalism. And I actually emailed Getz back before I even started any master's work. And we just went back and forth, and I was up till like 3 a.m. emailing him like, I think
that's
you're
like
wrong,
me. That's like me with Josh.
Yeah. I'm like, I think you're wrong. I think you don't get it, And we were just going back and forth, and he was way too nice. Like, why would he care what I thought at all? But I bought the book right away, and I was getting in. So it was like my first experience wrestling with a legit philosopher just the two of us locking minds there. And he was so generous and so cool about it. I emailed him like a few years later, and he's like, "Oh yeah, of course I remember. You said this, this, and this." I was like, "What? Yeah, amazing memory!" So,
dude, exactly. Okay, so I've had some similar things. So for in high school, we had this full IB program, International Baccalaureate. It's like AP for those of you who took AP. It's basically the same thing. It's slightly different, but it's basically the same thing. But anyway, we had to write an extended essay for our TOK class. TOK is theory of knowledge. So they basically had a kind of epistemology philosophy section for people who went full IB, and you had to write this extended essay. So I mean, at the time, it sounds like a lot, 4,000 words. I mean, now now after having gone through college, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
And after publishing stuff, 4,000 words, that's a breeze. But or a 40,000 word blog posts.
I was gonna say, dude, it's unreal.
So yeah, 4,000 is nothing. But anyway, my point is just that we had to write an essay, and it basically, the goal was to try to contribute to knowledge. So like to actually do like research or things like that. And you got to choose whatever topic you wanted in anything. And it's this super long process. It's like one of the culminations. It's almost like a thesis, really. And I did mine on philosophy, of course, and I wanted to do like an evolutionary argument from evil. And that's what I did it on. But I emailed a bunch of different philosophers. So like I emailed like Wes Morriston and Paul Draper and other people. And it's interesting. It's like years later, when I reached out to them again the first time since doing that, I'm like, "Do you remember me? I talked to you maybe like 3 years ago in high school." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that email." I'm like,
Crazy.
"Whoa!" It's like super awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, people are so generous with their time, and that can really make a difference. If I could just say, that really makes a difference in a young person's life. If you set out the time to, I don't know, just respond to some of their emails or their questions and so on, like you can really change the trajectory of someone's life, like Josh did with me. So
it's crazy. The amount of effort it takes for you to respond is not that much. Like, whatever, everyone's busy and stuff, but you could just send them a quick email back. But for them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, he emailed me back. He took me seriously," and they're just stewing over. Or you give them a short one, and then they go all Incredibles on you and Syndrome, and they become your nemesis. And they so careful what you say to kids, I guess. Another one that got me in really deep is Calvinism and the Problem of Evil. You familiar with this one at all, Joe?
No, I'm not.
This has got guys like Welty and Anderson. It's like actually Proust is in here too, given a counter argument.
I do know that he has. Yeah, Proust doesn't like compatibilism for that reason.
Yeah, and so it's really cool just seeing. At this time when it came out, it didn't seem like there were a lot of Calvinist philosophers wrestling with this stuff. So someone collected them all up. David Alexander and Daniel Johnson, and was like, let's talk about this. And they were really, really fun essays, and they're by good philosophers on like a really tough thing that seems like it's really hard to defend. So that one got me in deep and just obsessing over like Anderson and Welty back in the day. And so that was one that got me in pretty good. Another one that's like sneaky that people wouldn't know about but that's really helpful. The Many Faces of Evil by John Feinberg. And Feinberg was a professor of mine. And this is his dissertation turned book. He did a dissertation on the problem of evil at Chicago in the philosophy department, which was like, how did you get into philosophy after going to TEDS? And it was just different times, I guess. I don't know. But he's kind of like a robot. It's pretty wild. If someone said that there were like actual robots and AGI was possible, I'd be like, oh yeah, of course, because John Feinberg. Because like when he would teach from the class, he's going word for word from this book. And it's just like, how do you remember that, dude? So I would always ask him questions to go in deeper because I'm like, I read the chapter, man. I want to hear from you. But this is really, really good going in on the problem of evil. And actually his whole thing is that it's problems of evil. And they'll be raised for people based on the rest of your view. If you're a consequentialist, then you'll have to deal with this. If you're a Calvinist, if you're an Arminian, it's going to be raised for you in different ways. There's the evidential problem, the logical problem, the amount of evil, gratuitous evil, and it's just over and over, and he's hitting it from every angle. I don't think his answer works, but that's okay, Dr. Feinberg. We can argue about that. Anyways, it's a really good book, and it's a really good introduction, and it really will help you get clear on like what are you defending? Which one? You don't have to defend if it's not you. I don't care. I don't care about like what a libertarian would say. I'm not a libertarian, so I don't have to worry about that one. So I thought it was really helpful in getting in deep on the problem of evil. And then lastly, I'll just throw in atheism and theism. And this
is that Haldane and
yeah,
what's his
Smart.
name? Yeah.
JJC Smart. and J.J. Haldane, which is awesome that they got the J's in there. But I really love this book. I think it's like masterclass. Two giants kind of beating up on each other. And it seems like another one that kind of snuck underneath where not a whole ton of people talk about it.
Yeah.
But people who do know about it are like, that's a good book.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a thick one. Yeah.
I mean, for the audience, that's going to be our biggest one because we're both, I guess, probably most interested in philosophy of religion. I mean, I also am really interested in metaphysics, but I picked more for philosophy of religion just because I think, well, I don't know. I just thought your audience would appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump in. Metaphysics.
So I went first that last one. So it's your turn to go first for metaphysics.
Yeah. I think I picked this one after my philosophy of religion. So I only, well, there's a lot less, which is nice. But these were ones that I think, they're good. They'll give you a good overview. They'll suck you in to the other stuff. So let me start with the ones. So like Metaphysics by Anna Marmadoro and Erasmus Mayer. I never know how to say names, but this is pretty good. It's like Neo-Aristotelian. We used it in Paul Gould's class, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good overview. It's not super long. It's not super expensive, and I think it'll do a good job of getting you in on stuff and from a neo-Aristotelian perspective, which is fun. Go read PVI for the like counter perspective, and you won't have as many holes in your stuff. That's what I'm always afraid of. I don't want holes in my learning. So just kind of a nice little one for you.
I thought you were going to say, I don't want holes in my ontology. And I'm like, neither do I.
And then you could talk about the ontology of holes and what the heck are those?
Yeah.
Another really good one. This one's really good, I think. Alyssa Ney's Metaphysics.
Yeah.
Another one we did in Paul Gould's class, but she's really good. She's really clear. She's most of the chapters were really good. She does some stuff on like metaphysics of race, which I thought were kind of a little bit weak, but that was all brand new at the time she wrote this book, I believe. So it's a good primer. It'll get you in deep, and another affordable one. But I've put this out on like Twitter, and I get a lot of the Twitter philosophers who are like, I use that book. That's a really good book. So if you like Twitter, then it's a good recommendation. This one is another one that I don't know a ton of people who know about it, but those who do freak out about it. It's The Existence of the World by An Introduction to Ontology by Reinhard Grossman. And this was hard to come by for a little while, but really, really good. He talks about the debate between like naturalists and what he calls ontologists. But it's between realism and nominalism, and just super cool. We're going in on relations now. We're getting in. He's getting rigorous, and it's really short, but it's juicy. And he makes you like want to take his side. You want to be like, I'm an ontologist because I don't want those stupid, silly. It's really fun, man. It's a really good book that I really enjoyed. And if you can find it, I think it might be back in print. The Existence of the World, really good one. And then these last two, dude, I got I put this in Rasmussen's
yes,
Defending
lovely.
the Correspondence Theory of Truth. I put that in metaphysics. I have another one on truth in like semantics or some other category we can make up. But Rasmussen's like, he's a metaphysician, and he treats truth metaphysically, and I like that, and I think it's really good. And I was so hung up on like certain things that we don't have to talk about, but like Davidson's slingshot argument, and I think there's one from Frege, and he answers them, and I was like, no one else. I've looked forever. No one's talking about these, and Josh did, and so it's really, really good. It's hard. Some of them are really hard if you haven't done that, but his treatment of propositions is like just so good, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
I cite that. I cite it. I draw on his account of propositions and you probably know this, in my forthcoming Springer book, Existential Inertia and Classical Theistic Proofs. I draw on his approach to propositions in the chapter on the Augustinian proof. So like,
and that came up in our own discussion of
absolutely.
It's so good, dude. I really I like Josh, so I always want to like promote his stuff too, but it's just so nice that his book is so good. I can promote that like wholeheartedly and just push it. I think it's probably expensive, so sorry guys, but And then lastly, this one got me. This one made me love metaphysics. I always wanted to like do epistemology, and now epistemology is so hard. But
Yeah.
I know you know this one, Beyond the Control of God.
Oh yeah, that one's
and
super fun.
and it's edited by Paul Gould. But it's just like the contributors are so sick. It's so good. You got Keith Andel, who we talked about, Paul Gould, Richard Bryan
Poppy
Davis,
is in there.
Oppie's in there, Greg Welty, who like rarely ever makes an appearance and stuff, but he popped in. William Lane Craig's in there. Is Scott Shalosky? That doesn't look familiar, but it looks like he's in here too. Sorry, Scott. Come on the podcast. It's so good. It's good to see them just beating up on each other and getting in deep on propositions and abstracta and concepts and relating it all back to God. So this like helped me get in on philosophy of religion deeper. But I wanted to think about these things, and it was so cool to see people taking them seriously and just wailing on each other. It was awesome. Yeah. So
It's
this is
fun.
like one of my favorite
honestly,
books.
Yeah, it's honestly just like a fun book too, because
Yeah.
the problems it raises are just fun. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
they're really interesting.
And they're good philosophers, just tearing each other apart. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So my metaphysics stuff. So yeah, I didn't have too long of a list for this one. Oh gosh, can I point the right direction? Yay, I did. The Atlas of Reality. That's my favorite
Oh
metaphysics
man,
book.
dude.
It's my
Do you have
favorite
that in
metaphysics.
hardcover?
I do. I got it as a Christmas
Holy
present. Yeah,
cow.
it was expensive, but it was a Christmas present like 3 years ago or something. But anyway, it's like my favorite metaphysics book, and I just think it's unsurpassed. So yeah, it's the Atlas of Reality. It's so good. It gives you tools to think about these sorts of things. So it talks about the different kinds of simplicity and anyway, just theory comparison tools, but it goes through the whole panoply. It really is the Atlas of Reality.
Yeah.
It goes to the whole panoply of issues. It's like 700 or 800 pages or something. So I highly recommend that.
I think it's coming out in softcover like soon. So
nice.
that'll be nice too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, then I can dunk on people because I have the hardcover. So
That's right. That's right.
Okay. The second one is yet another Routledge, right? They're taking the cake, right? So it's definitely the Lux book. We use this one in our metaphysics class.
Oh, awesome.
It's really good, and yeah, it talks about
Lux and Crisp, right?
Yeah, Lux and Crisp.
Yeah.
It's,
Love Crisp.
This is the newer, the fourth edition. I think it's the newest one, and
Yeah.
you know, of course, this is something that actually got Josh interested in propositions, the chapter 4, propositions and their neighbors. But anyway, it's so good. It's got the problem of universals, goes through nominalism, realism, like concreta. So it talks about substrate theory, bundle theory, Aristotelian substance-based theory. It talks about propositions, talks about modality, causation, the nature of time, persistence, parts and wholes, metaphysical indeterminacy. And then the last chapter, I think this is one of the new ones, the challenge of anti-realism, you know, so things like Dummett and Putnam and these sorts of people who are anti-metaphysical, as it were. So super interesting book. And I highly recommend it.
That book was super helpful when I was writing a paper on facts and I couldn't find stuff. And this is before I could get a hold of Josh's book. This was like 3 years ago. And I finally found them in there. And it was that part about propositions and their neighbors. And they're talking about states of affairs and obtaining states of affairs as facts, and so helpful. And so that was like a life preserver when I was drowning.
Exactly. The next one that I have for, I guess, general metaphysics was, or the final one for general metaphysics. I have some specific ones under the metaphysical category.
Yeah.
But it was E.J. Lowe. He has a really nice intro for metaphysics. It's called A Survey of Metaphysics. So I don't have a physical copy of that one, but that's highly recommended.
Do you have a metaphysical copy of that, or?
Yes, don't we all? So I just had two subcategories for, I guess, the aspects of metaphysics that interest me most, or I guess three, were time, infinity, and modal metaphysics. So for time, I only had one, but it's one that I now can recommend to people because it's really recent, but also it's, again, Routledge is out competing people. So it's right there. It's right behind me, the Philosophy of Time, a contemporary introduction. It's quite new, and I recommend that for people. The next one that I had was modal metaphysics, and I just have one in this regard because it kind of gives a survey of a bunch of different theories, and it defends a kind of branching actualist view or an Aristotelian powers-based view. But again, it's Alexander Proust. It's actuality, possibility, and worlds. This one is so good. I really enjoyed it. He kind of convinced me of the branching view of modality, and it's kind of popular nowadays. You know, Graham Oppie holds to a version of this view. Koons holds to a version of it. Josh Rasmussen is at least sympathetic to it. Alex Malpass holds to it. So anyway, you're in good company if you accept the view. So that's modal metaphysics. And then Infinity, I have one hardcover, which is behind me, of course, right? Infinity, Causation, and Paradox. Super fun read, just because it's all these different paradoxes.
That's Proust too, right?
Yeah, Alexander
Yeah.
Proust.
Legend, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm a big Proust boy, as it were.
Yeah.
So as you can see,
Yeah.
and then the other one was Graham Oppy's Philosophical Perspectives on Infinity. Also, a really great treatment of infinity and the issues that it raises. So,
Okay.
And just the way to think about certain paradoxes. I mean, a distinction that people oftentimes overlook is like, you can tell an inconsistent story with anything, right? Like, if just because you can tell an inconsistent story involving a taxi, right, it doesn't follow that taxis are impossible. So that's something that you could take away from Oppy, and he talks about ways to evaluate these sorts of paradoxes. So, yeah, the basic idea is that even if some denumerable infinites are impossible, it doesn't follow that all of them would be impossible. So anyway, it's a really interesting book.
I love that. I love when I find Oppy's work outside of philosophy of religion, because he's such a good philosopher of religion, and people always reference him as like the greatest living atheist. But I think his work on facts, I think Rasmussen was mentioning that, or propositions back in the day, and then infinities. It's just cool. Like, he's a good philosopher, not just a philosopher of religion. As like that'd be enough, but good philosopher. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a caution for the audience, Proust's book is technical, but it has sections where they're like asterisked. So they're like not at the ones that are asterisked are quite technical, and some of them have double and triple asterisks. So they get into like calculus and so on. So that one's kind of technical, but Philosophical Perspectives on Infinity is also quite technical, just for the be aware for the audience.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my metaphysics stuff.
Okay. Awesome. Should we move to epistemology?
Yeah. So I don't. So I guess I'll go first in this one because, yeah. So I didn't have much in here, mainly because, yeah, I've since the beginning I found epistemology is just beyond my pay grade. It's too difficult for me. No, but it's just there are so many different theories, and I find myself I'm like. But anyway, so I just have two here that I recommend and that I've found beneficial. One of them is, of course, Michael Huemer's Skepticism in the Veil of Perception.
Yeah.
It's a really good defense of phenomenal conservatism, and yeah, it's really influential as well. He kind of invented that term, and it's really caught on, and a lot of good philosophers are sympathetic to it. So anyway, it's a good book as well that I recommend people get. And then the second one that I had here was, and unfortunately I have neither of these in physical copy, was just the classic Richard Feldman book, just entitled Epistemology. You can't get better than that kind of classic. Right, exactly. Yeah, that one. That one's the one I'm talking about.
Yep.
So yeah, on to you for epistemology.
Yeah. So I love the Feldman book. Yeah, humor's good. I don't know what I was thinking with this one. I was just kind of grabbing randoms, but this, like, what was influential for me first was another John Frame book. So shout out to the people who know what that is. It's the Doctrine of the Knowledge of God. This is like, I knew nothing about anything, and I didn't even know that part of it. So like, he just helped me like get into what is epistemology, and we were just talking about like what is justification, perspectives on justification, and then like just random stuff like the duck rabbit. Like, I learned about the duck rabbit from this book, like way back in the day, like I don't know, 2014 or something. So that was huge. This one, another one that people just won't like, but it's Survey of Christian Epistemology. I had to throw in some Van Til here, but this got me into thinking about transcendental arguments and going from there to like Peter Strawson's type stuff. AC Grayling used to be like really big into like the refutation of skepticism and trying to use transcendental arguments. So from there, I got into that's how I got into epistemology. So Robert Stern's Transcendental Arguments and Skepticism. So I got in like on the skeptical route. Can we know anything like for certain? Like, so I love that stuff. I love that kind of literature. Robert Stern, awesome. Then I went to these are like the people I learned epistemology from. So like Warrant and Proper Function, Warrant and the current current debate. Man, I'm struggling right now. Joe, hang on. Can I get some water?
Yes, absolutely.
Man,
I can entertain the audience if you want. I know you might cut this out, but
yeah, entertain them, dude. Get them.
Okay, so let me just take my shirt off. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, epistemology, I guess it's interesting, but I've always just found there are so many, like, skepticism, it's so difficult. There's so many different solutions to it, responses to it. It's like, do you take phenomenal conservatism? Do you go an externalist route? It's just a route. Some people pronounce it differently. But anyway, it's just so difficult. That's why I only picked 2 for that one.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. That was great. I'm glad you didn't take your shirt off, but yeah.
Well,
So
yeah.
what I was saying about planning, like this is like really good survey of the times, like Bonjour and like Chisholm and like who are these guys? Like what are they saying? Here's his argument. All the kind of stuff like the XX pill and all that like tricky stuff. This was my introduction. A lot of it was really hard. I probably should have started somewhere else, but super thankful. I no longer like hold to his view, but um he's not really super going over his view in these either. Just really helpful. I would definitely recommend going through Richard Feldman's epistemology first. Epistemology first prior to any of these other ones. Just super helpful. Another really good one, kind of along the same lines of the stuff that I like, is the epistemological skyhook. And this used to be stupid expensive, and I bought it with like Christmas money. And it's like a compendium of self-defeating arguments against naturalism and determinism. And he traces them out, and Jim Slagle, he's been on the podcast a couple times. Awesome guy, really love this guy. But yeah, he's trying to make these arguments more rigorous, and then he gives his own a priori teleological argument against determinism and naturalism at the end. So really cool book, but like a super good overview, and will help you get in on the literature and understanding like self-defeat type stuff. And then lastly, like, dude, I love Barry Stroud. This book got ripped when I was moving, which is really sad, but Understanding Human Knowledge, really good. This is like a bunch of his essays in epistemology. And Barry Stroud is awesome. He's like always arguing on behalf of the skeptic. He's like, yeah, I'm not a skeptic myself, but here's why we can't know anything. And you're like, Barry, dude, like, what the heck? And he just he's really intellectually honest. He's like, I don't think that we've solved these problems yet, and you guys have moved on, but no one's talked about them. So can we just talk about them some more? I'm not saying that they're knocked down, that we all have to be skeptics, but he's like, you haven't done it. And I just love that kind of like, he's just throwing down the gauntlet. Like, let's go back and let's talk. That type of mentality is super good. So yeah, those are the ones I know. Like, people are like, there's so much other epistemology. Dude, I'm with Joe. Like, epistemology is tough, man. Like, there are a lot of good things, and there's a lot of good essays, knowledge first type stuff, but I don't think I have a super amazing grasp on them to even like offer someone else. So I'm not the guy to give you all the inside scoop on that
And
stuff.
neither am I for epistemology, certainly, and some of these other domains, as we're about to see.
Yeah.
My forte now is kind of past.
yeah, right. Now we're just like showing what we haven't read, I guess. But okay, Phil Mind type stuff. What do you
You're
think?
first on this one.
Okay, cool. This is another one that I geek out over, and I don't have just tons of essays. There's a lot of essays in this stuff, and really important, influential essays that you just have to kind of master, like what is it like to be a bat type stuff, and like the Chinese room, and these kind of the Mary argument. So this is a one-stop shop. Philosophy of Mind. It's edited by Chalmers, David Chalmers, Classical and Contemporary Readings. This is the second edition. I think it just came out this year. And we use this in Brandon Rickabaw's class. But man, if you read like this whole thing, you would have such a good grasp of the philosophy of mind. It's really good. I love the choices. I love the selections. One top shop. So good. So I didn't pick like a ton, but ones that I thought would be super duper helpful. Again, Routledge, John Hyles' book.
I have that one. Yeah, that's on my list.
So good. This is the third edition. I have the fourth as well, and I think in the fourth he brought back Donald Davidson's anomalous monism, which is cool. But like, man, good luck understanding what he's saying there. So I do like the third one better. So I would just recommend the third one. He's got more stuff that he didn't cut out. There's not a huge difference if you get the fourth, whatever. But I do really, really, really like this book, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. But again, it's in the same series. The series is gold. I love it. So that was good. The Emergent Self. This is William Hasker.
Yeah, Hasker.
I love this because I think Hasker is such a good philosopher, and this is a tough book. I bought it way long ago and wasn't able to actually get into it until years after I bought it. I just love it. I love this type of stuff. I love the way he thinks too. Super, super good. He develops his emergent mind thesis where I love the thesis, emergent dualism, that like the mind emerges out of the stuff of matter. So it's kind of, I think it is kind of committed to like a proto-panpsychism or pan-proto-psychism. But dude, it's good, man. It's really fun. I really like getting into that. And then I think this is the best philosophy of mind book out there. It's Jaegwon Kim's.
I predicted it, dude. That's my number one that I recommended. So yeah, you've already knocked out 2 out of my 3. But the number one was Jaegwon Kim's The Philosophy of Mind. It's probably the best textbook that there is.
So good. And really, really good. Like he's got this whole chapter, the mind as a computing machine, which helps you think about like Turing machines, and just amazing. It's so good. I really, really appreciate this book. Not everyone, I don't know, not everyone includes it in their syllabus, but I love it. I think everyone should. And then for like a recent one, Richard Swinburne, Are We Bodies or Souls?
Yeah, I had him on my channel to talk about that one.
Yeah, he's coming on my channel to talk about it too.
Really?
I'm stoked for it.
Nice.
Finally got him, dude. Finally got him. Yeah.
You could have me on your channel to just pretend.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Just put a still picture of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This book's tough. Like look at the size of it. Yeah, I thought it was like, oh, a nice little book by Swinburne. It was like, no, dude, there are no nice little books by Swinburne. But he's got his stuff on designators really, really cool. I love that he like soups up Descartes' argument, and he's like, well, not quite, but here I'm going to soup it up. And I'm really excited to talk to him about Descartes and his version of Descartes' cogito, and informative and uninformative designators. Like, dude, I'm stoked on it. So this is one that I definitely commend to people. It's tough, but good luck. It's fun.
Yeah, so you already knocked out 2 of mine out of the 3. So my next one was, this one is totally underrated. It's by it's Tim Crane. It's The Mechanical Mind.
Oh, okay.
Tim Crane is great at writing, so I don't have this one physically, unfortunately. But yeah, Tim Crane, firstly, he's great at writing. He's really engaging. But secondly, The Mechanical Mind is a really good book, and it touches on some of the neglected aspects of philosophy of mind debates. So it's like it's really big book on it's really big on intentionality and computation and other sorts of things. So I would highly recommend that one as well for people.
Okay.
And Tim Crane's work more generally in philosophy of mind. So yeah, those are my 3 for philosophy of mind. It's not that much.
Yeah.
And then, I guess we can move on to.
Well, Tim Crane is awesome. I love that dude. I just had him on the show, and that episode will be out on Monday. And we're talking about intentionality. So nice plug, dude. That was perfect. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
I just love him. Like, he's a super generous guy too. He's really, really awesome to talk with. But I love his stuff because it's a little bit different. Chalmers is kind of like that too. Where they're just kind of different. They just think differently than a lot of the people in the field. But they're really tough, really like tough-minded. So it's like you have to take what they say seriously. I really like that about them.
Yeah. All right, on to free will, and I'm almost certain I'm going to be knocking out some of yours with this one. But the first one is the absolutely unparalleled, and I say this with authority. This is the best book on free will that exists. It's the Routledge. It's Free Will: A Contemporary Introduction. Michael McKenna and Dirk Verboom.
Yep.
Oh my goodness! Like, if you want to get hey, what are the contemporary debates, and how do you get me up to steam, as it were? Like, how do you get me up on the train? Like, what are the debates going on right now in philosophy journals? Read this book. This is so good. Anyway, I can't recommend it enough. I've got all these different highlights in here, and oh my goodness, and like, this doesn't hold back. I mean, it says it's an introduction, but it doesn't really hold back.
Right.
Some of it is like, you really have to mull over this sort of thing. And oh my goodness, like this book just serves to reinforce my agnosticism between libertarianism and compatibilism, because you're reading these, you're like, dang, that's plausible. And then you turn to the chapter, and it's like for the opposite view. Dang, that's plausible.
Yeah.
And then so
super clear too, like clarifies the classical compatibilist incompatibilist debate versus the modern. And it was just like, because I came into this through theology, and everyone's still talking the classical stuff, and so they don't even understand the new stuff. So when I was reading widely, and I just was so confused why people were talking past each other, and this book just opened it all up and like, okay, there's two debates here, and the theologians didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's also really balanced because Pierre Boom and McKenna have different views on this. So
yeah. Neither are libertarian, which was funny. At the end, I was like, "Wait, what is Paraboom?" And then I had to ask Seer a while back. He's like, "Oh, he's a skeptic, dude. Yeah, he doesn't."
Yeah. So I mean, but you have a compatibilist and an incompatibilist at least. So I mean, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And one who affirms free will and one who denies it. So that's really interesting. So it's balanced. It's good. It's clear. It's rigorous. I love it. So that's my number one for free will, and I think I only have two more for this one. The next one is Freedom, Fatalism, and Foreknowledge by John Martin Fisher and Patrick Todd. This is very, very good. It's a collection of essays on the topics of freedom, fatalism, and foreknowledge, of course. It's got Hartshorne in here, Arthur Pryor, what's his name? Trent Merricks, Peter Van Inwagen, Michael Ray, Linda Zagzebski. So yeah, it's great. And that one is also helpful to get you up to debates, up to speed. And then the one that I recommend people who just are wanting to get into the free will debate is Robert Cain, of course. Robert Cain's A Contemporary Introduction to Free Will.
Yeah.
This is it's short, it's super clearly written. It goes through the major arguments.
Yeah.
This is like if I were teaching an intro class, this is definitely what I would use. So I highly recommend this is the starter. This is the essential starter.
Yeah.
Before you start graduating to like these more higher level ones. So anyway, those are my three for free will.
Yeah, I only had a couple more because all the ones like I have a lot on like John Martin Fisher, where it's like responsibility and control. I love, but it's not like it's specialized. So like the one we just the Routledge one is amazing because it's going to give you this huge scope. The other one I have it over there. I forgot to grab it, but it's 4 views on free will, and John Martin Fisher is one of the contributors. So I don't know who edited it. I'm sorry, folks, but you can find it on Amazon. Just search John Martin Fisher 4 views on free will, and I really like that one too. I think the contributors are good in there. So yeah, free will is fun, man, and it's one of the fields where I feel like it's so lively. I feel like things are just going like popping right now, you know?
Yeah, that one. That's another one where it's like, oh my goodness, this debate is so difficult.
Yeah,
it's another one of those where like I almost start to sympathize with Peter Van Inwagen and Mysterianism. I'm like, dude, this stuff. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, it's so tough. Matt Flummer, the co-host of the Free Will Show,
which is amazing. I recommend that to everyone.
Super good. Everyone go listen to that.
I've listened to every single one of their episodes.
They're so good.
Dude, I have notifications turned on for their YouTube channel.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, they're amazing. They're good dudes too. And Matt is so funny where he's just like, this stuff's tough. I'm like, Matt, what do you believe, dude? And he's just like, depends on the day. I'm like, no, you study this stuff. He's like, I study this stuff. That's why I can't decide. Dude.
Exactly.
And
I sympathize with that so much. Like,
yeah.
I think there's free will, but I don't know if it's libertarian, if it's compatibilist, and
yeah. And then more responsibility is a whole different thing. And then
oh my gosh, yeah.
It's fun. It's really fun. That's something I haven't had a whole ton of time to work on lately. It's just like other stuff like metaphysics has been pulling me in and philosophy of religion, but it's a big field and it's like burgeoning right now.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's a good one. Let's jump in. You got some stuff for philosophy of language?
Not really. This is one of the fields that I haven't studied all that much. I mean, I know a lot of like the basic terrain to be able to engage in philosophy. Like, of course, I know what the distinction is between a rigid designator and non-rigid designators with proper names and definite and indefinite descriptions and things like that. But in terms of like the subtle debates that are going on in philosophy of language, I'm totally out of touch, unfortunately. I only have one book in here that I haven't even read the whole thing. I've only read portions. And it's Michael Morris. It's from Cambridge Introductions to Philosophy.
Okay.
So it's just called An Introduction to the Philosophy of Language. What I read from that, it was quite clear, and it covers a sufficient extent or breadth of the terrain, as it were. And I know Routledge has one, Philosophy of Language, a Contemporary Introduction. I haven't read it, so I don't know if I can.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
It is good. Okay.
Yeah. It's William Lycan, and a lot of people are like, "This is his jam. Like, this is really good." I haven't read all of it, but from what I need to, but from what I have read and the people who have recommended it, it's like, get this book. Yeah.
Nice.
They should sponsor us, dude. Routledge needs to like give us some money here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple here. I put this in there, like A Realist Conception of Truth by William Alston, because I think that he's kind of handling truth more in the linguistic model, or at least the people he's interacting with, like Putnam and so it might be in metaphysics, but no, I think it's more. I think it's more in the philosophy of language, and if it's not, whatever, you're getting this for free. But I really like this book. I really like Alston. I like the way he thinks. I think he's a super clear thinker, and it just like sucks you in. If you get this and Rasmussen, like, you're gonna be so good on truth. Like, it's gonna it's gonna be awesome. For my listeners, they know I love Donald Davidson. So like, he's got this all his essays or all his journal articles are now in books. So this is Donald David, terrible title, but Subjective, Intersubjective, and Objective. That terrible. Like,
that is a very bad title.
Look at the Force Ghost. Like, I don't know why they made him look like Gollum, and they're like, this will be good. They did my man so dirty here.
He almost looks like the there's this weird cult that was like the Hale Bopp comet. I don't know if you heard this. But, they committed like mass suicide, and they had like the black Nikes that they all wore. That looks like the leader of that.
He looks like he could.
What his name is, like Bo or whatever. I think it was Bo or whatever.
I don't know.
I forget.
Oh man,
that's what it looked like.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, so they need to like change the title and the cover.
Oh, Heaven's Gate. That's what it's called. Heaven's Gate.
Okay. Yeah. But in this I don't know how Davidson's received nowadays, but I know like his stuff on truth, people have kind of like rejected, like out, like they're just not there anymore. But like his stuff on like rationality and rational animals, I think is still around, and his stuff on concepts, and he's just a really cool thinker. So I really like this book. Yeah, I love this book. There's just like, I don't know if you can see, but it's just like stupid amount of notes. Like, it's super helpful for me.
Yeah, I wish I showed some of the notes that I've taken for some of these books. Oh my goodness.
Especially they're just destroyed.
Introduction one is destroyed with notes.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. Another one. Okay, so maybe people don't want to jump in on the Davidson stuff, but I think everyone can benefit from Reason, Truth, and History by Hilary Putnam. This is like a lot of really classic essays on philosophy of language type stuff, content externalism. He's got his essay on the brain in a vat, problem of reference, to mind and body, fact and value, reason and history. Like, I don't know, Hilary Putnam's wild, but everyone took him super duper seriously. And I mean, in the philosophy of science, like, just legend, but really good philosopher, and twin earth type stuff. Like, this is the book. So I would recommend people grab this one and just read through it, just to have that under your belt. So I commend this one as well.
Yeah, I forgot one. I mean, this is on the border of metaphysics and philosophy of language. It's kind of in both, but I can't believe I didn't include this one. But yeah, it's all Kripke, Naming and Necessity.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, I got it upstairs on my table. But yeah. Like, for sure, like legend. Like, yes, you got to get into that.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta get on those rigid designators and that essentialism.
I really like that stuff, man. That's fun. Yeah. So then again, like, this is what I would point people to. Like, if you want to get in on,
I should read that.
William Lycan. Yeah. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but
I've heard it. I've heard his name pronounced, and I think it's Lycan. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Dude, we're almost done here. I think.
Well, yeah, that's good. We're on. I mean, we're timing it well, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I put political philosophy, and for me, like, I don't know if I have like the books on it, but like, I got into this stuff from like Ron Paul, and then I went into like Austrian economics type stuff. And, like, yeah. So like, I still like me some Austrian economics, but yeah, I don't have like a whole bunch. I haven't spent a lot of time on the philosophy, political philosophy. Okay. You got anything in the
I was gonna say, I mean, this is, I mean, you know, we all have to have some. This is a nice dose of intellectual humility for me. It's good that I can say this, even though it's not good that I say this. But I think I've only read one book in political philosophy, like proper political philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not to say like politics. I mean, obviously, I've read some books in politics, but in political philosophy, I think I've only read a single book. And I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but I don't endorse the view defended in here. But it's the problem of political authority.
Oh, no way, dude. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
It's I mean, I kid you not, this is unfortunately...
You got to say it again, because I think I interrupted you. Yeah.
No. I mean, yeah, the problem of political authority by Michael Huemer.
Yep.
And it's the only book that I've read on political philosophy. I'm not an anarchist, nor am I an anarcho-capitalist. So let me say that at the outset. But it does get you into some of the issues. You know, it talks about political authority and some of the questions there that you can raise and what justifies it. And are you consenting to be governed just because you live in a certain area? Like, you know, you investigate these sorts of questions. So I found it interesting. But I guess I'm just not a political philosophy kind of guy, unfortunately. That's not to say that it's not important. I think it's monumentally important. But I just have my interests lying elsewhere in metaphysics and things like that.
Yeah. Same. And I was going to recommend that book. One of my friends teaches on that and just says he has a really fun time wrestling with the students over it, because he's like, man, humor's tough. Like, this is tough stuff to wrestle with. Like, he even says, like, yeah, if you're not a theist, this is really hard. It would be really moving. But, you know, as a Christian theist, we got certain things where it's like, yeah, you're supposed to obey your political rulers. Okay, but that it's a dictum, right? But it's like, okay, how do I wrestle through this? So I'm looking forward to jumping in on that and just wrestling with humor on that. I want to be able to, this is like a hole in my philosophy, and I want to be able to at least tell people where to go. So like, hopefully in a year or 2 years, whenever, I can be like, here's the shape of the argument, here's the logical space or whatever, right? Even if I'm not an expert at all, like, I would like to as a well-rounded philosopher, I think it'd be nice to be able to talk.
I know, that's something. I mean, I wish I could have a really, really, really good grasp on all these different areas, but
me too,
there's just not enough time. I mean, this is why I almost, like, in some sense, I want there to be like an afterlife, so I guess I can read more and things like that, and explore more. Because there's just so much. But
no,
yeah,
it's crazy.
But,
so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, let's go into value theory if we can.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit similar in that. Like, people keep asking me about ethics or recommendations, and I'm like, I read like Harry Gensler's and a couple others, but I kind of just hate ethics. I kind of just hate it. And there's more to value theory than ethics, and I'm finding that out, and that's cool. But a lot of the stuff that I think is cool in value theory is in philosophy of religion type stuff.
Yeah, so, like, I'm only like, I'm sorry, people, I'm only interested in meta ethics. Like, it's the closest to metaphysics, so like I can get a hold of these sorts of questions. But it's like applied ethics, I'm like, these questions are so difficult, man. And like the debates and like normative ethics, it's like there are so many theories and they all have problems, and it's like anyway, it's so difficult. But I'll go first on this one just because I only have 3 and they're kind of quick.
Yeah.
So one of them is very, very good, and this is what we use in a grad seminar with Pat Kane. He's an ethicist. It is The Foundations of Ethics. It's edited by Russ Schaefer-Landau and Terence Cuneo. I can recommend all of Schaefer-Landau and Cuneo's work. I hope to get them more on my channel. I had Schaefer-Landau on my channel talk with Kane B. But this is really good because it introduces you to like a lot of the different theories. It talks about moral ontology first. So that's part 1. It talks about error theory, expressivism. It has a bunch of different essays. The second one is problems in meta-ethics. So from like moral motivation and reasons, moral disagreement, moral knowledge. So I guess it's kind of mainly a meta-ethical book, but it still touches on lots of these different areas. So yeah, I guess I'm much more sympathetic to meta-ethics. And then just 2 more. This one is good. The Ethics Toolkit. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Dude, it's like the Philosopher's Toolkit.
Same guys, huh?
Yeah, Bajini and Posel.
Yeah.
Or however you pronounce it.
I always say it different in my head, but I'm glad you said it, not me.
So yeah, a compendium of ethical concepts and methods. Like, this is giving you the tools to think about, to critically think in the context of ethics. And of course, I guess I don't use that all that much because I don't think about ethics all that much. No, but like seriously, it's a good book. So it just goes through so many different, it defines all these different things. It defines rights. needs, merit, flourishing, all these different things. And it talks about the different normative theories. So, and it goes through the central concepts in ethics and the central distinctions. So the distinction between absolute and relative, the distinction between act and rule, the distinction between beneficence and non-malfeasance, the distinction between cause and reason, the distinction between doing and allowing, the distinction between means and ends, and so on. So like really good distinctions that you just need for your, I guess, conceptual toolkit. Again, this is an exercise in conceptual empowerment. So these sorts of books I love. And then the final one is, of course, probably a mutual friend of ours, or maybe even multiple mutual friends. I don't know, but Applied Ethics, an Impartial Introduction.
Yes.
So
I forgot about that one.
This is a really nice one. It's so non-technical. Like anyone can get into this. Anyone can get interested in this, and yet it still preserves, I want to say, the rigor of the argumentation. So, this by Liz Jackson, Tyron Goldschmidt, Dustin Crummett, and Rebecca Chan. So I recommend this to people. I actually got this as a gift for my graduation from one of my patrons. So much love.
Nice. That's awesome.
The person might even be watching this. So much love to you. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's huge. That's a great book. From what I hear and from the people, like, mutual friends, you have to endorse that. I'll say Gensler's, like, for ethics. I just don't like this stuff, man. So like,
I know. Oh, I forgot one. Humor. His ethical intuitionism is good.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that.
I guess the anti-realists in the audience won't like me saying that, but at least, it's good in the sense of it'll give people an insight into how realists, or at least realists of a particular sort, tend to argue and tend to think. So that's
Okay. All right. Well, that's huge. How about logic? So last one here.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? I don't care.
Let me go first. Yeah, I'll just rip
totally
these off.
Cool.
So starting out, there's like I was collecting logic books for a while, so I have like a whole shelf of those, and I wasn't reading them, so that was not great. But I started reading them again, and I really like Susan Hack's Philosophy of Logics, and I didn't really realize that it was like, it's like meta logic. It's like getting in on logical theories, and I was like, that's what I actually love. I actually don't want to write any more truth tables. I'm kind of done with that. But I still count it in the logic category. Philosophy of Logics. I love this book. I think it's really good. And you'll see like logics, because she's saying like there's like this debate between the pluralists and the monists concerning logic. So that one's really fun. This might be like a sneaky one for people. So Vern Poitras, he wrote Logic, a God-centered approach to the foundations of Western thought. And you might think like, oh, this is like a homeschool book or something. But homie got his PhD in mathematics from like Harvard, I think. So like he still knows his stuff. And he would go in on like Barbara and Celerant and all the names.
Oh,
of the
medieval.
So that was,
dude, that's like Aristotelian categorical logic.
Kind of fun, man. Kind of fun, like going in on some of that stuff, and like some people really like memorizing that stuff, and it's really helpful, and that's cool. I liked some of that stuff, but he goes over propositional logic, and then he'll say like, here's how I think this connects with God, and it might trigger you because he goes so quick over it, and it's like, well, that's not an argument. You just kind of like stated it, but okay. It's not that kind of thing. He's just saying like, here's how I see it. Multi-valued logic, like propositional. It's good. He goes through a lot. He actually goes through a lot. You can't learn it all from just this, because he does go way too quick. But it's like, I'd say it's a nice introduction. And then another really good introduction to logic, David Kelly, The Art of Reasoning. I really like this book. Really helpful compared to like, I took an undergrad logic class, and the book was awful. I don't even.
I hope it's not one of my recommendations.
Oh, I hope not. I'm sure it won't be, because it's so bad.
Tell me what it is.
I don't know. I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it.
Just do it. I don't care.
Well, they might care. I don't want to like blast somebody, and because I'm saying it's so bad. Like,
well,
if you say it, if it's one of yours, I'll say it. I doubt it is.
Oh, you need to say it, man.
I can't say it, dude. I can't, because I was too mean. That I like The Art of Reasoning. That one like saved me from this other one. But actually, my first one was Harry Gensler's Introduction to Logic, and I really like it. He's got this weird star system in here, and I don't recommend doing his star system. It's kind of like outmoding your reasoning. You're just like looking for patterns instead of like thinking about it. And maybe if you're trying to see if the argument's valid, okay. But it's just like this weird extra step that I don't think you need to do. And he's got a DVD that comes with it. Don't use the DVD, I'd say. But the rest of it's awesome. It's
What
good.
even is a DVD at this point?
Oh yeah, dude, that's right. That's how. Yeah, we're going back a little bit on that. That's hilarious. I think probably the best one is Copy and Cohen's. I really like this one, and from what I hear from
I've heard that one being recommended before.
yeah, from my like older philosopher friends, they're all like, it's in its 14th edition, so it's been around for a while. You don't have to get the 14th. That's just a money ploy. Like that's from the publishers doing that, and they're like, well, let's change this word so I can get more money. Make them buy the. This book's really good. I think it'll help you get a really good grasp. Once you have that, then I would say again back to Ted Sider's Logic for Philosophy.
Yeah, that's
because
one of
that's
mine there.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
So
that's me.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So you definitely took my Ted Sider one. Like I'd say get a grasp of the propositional and predicate logic and quantifier logic first. But once you get that, yeah, go on to Ted Sider's Logic for Philosophy. Okay, so now on to my recommendations, which I just crossed that one off. So the first one, and these I only have one of them is on hard copy. The first one, this is what I'm hoping you didn't say. This is the one that Purdue uses for its philosophy logic classes, and it is Language, Proof, and Logic.
Oh no,
really
no,
good.
that's everyone says that's amazing. Everyone says that's the book.
It is so good. It is so it's amazing. So I highly recommend that one. It's one of my top recommendations for someone who wants to get into it, and it comes with, well, if you buy the book, right, you get like a code, and you just download some software, and it doesn't hurt your computer or anything. I still have the software. And it's really cool. Like it has this world, and there are various shapes, and you like test inference rules, you test the validity of things. It's super cool, and it comes with like a validity checker, so you construct proofs and subproofs. It's Fitch style, right? So Fitch style is pretty standard. It's one of the most standard styles that used in philosophy. So it's really good. Language, Proof, and Logic. I highly recommend it. So that's one of my first recommended logic books. The second recommended logic book for, again, propositional, predicate, quantifier, etc., is it's called Classical Logic and Its Rabbit Holes, a first course.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's by Nelson Landy or Landa, something like that. I think that's how it's pronounced. But that is also a really good introduction. And a lot of people, like Liz Jackson, recommends this one to people as her number one go-to for recommending people getting into logic.
Awesome.
My recommendation is Language, Proof, and Logic. But I put this one on there because of Liz Jackson. So so I actually haven't read this one that I'm recommending. The Classical Logic and Its Rabbit Holes, but because Liz really highly recommends it, I put it on there. So
and Liz is a beast. So
yes, exactly.
She says it,
Liz is a queen, and so you can't not put that on there.
Right.
Okay. The next one is for people who specifically want to get into modal logic, but also how it relates to philosophy. Modal Logic for Philosophers. It's a book by James Garson. I recommend people check that out if they want to understand what is this, what are people doing with these boxes and diamonds and the accessibility relation like. So yeah, I recommend that. The next one, I only have two more recommendations. The next one is my physical copy, which I absolutely love. It is by, so this guy is so great, Eric Steinhardt. I've had him on my channel like 2 times or something like that. More precisely, The Math You Need to Do Philosophy.
Oh yeah,
this is just like Papineau's.
Papineau mentions in every one of the all his recommended readings that after each chapter is like, and this book again, and this book again.
So this is the math you need to do philosophy. Like, this is not clickbait title. So it goes sets, relations, machines. So like, what are state machines? What are these rules? Semantics, probability, information theory, decisions in games. So talking about like expected utility in game theory. And then from the finite to the infinite. So talking about limits, recursively defined things, infinity, Hilbert's Hotel, supertasks, and then even bigger infinities. That's the final chapter where you're talking about Cantor's diagonalization argument, these sorts of things.
Stuff, so like, dude. That's fun.
Exactly. So this is needed if someone wants to do philosophy. And then the final one, which is just a resource for people, it's called the Open Logic Project. And a bunch of logic professors and so on are like, hey, let's make logic freely available to the public. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's what I try to do with my channel and what you try to do with your channel. So I'm all on board with these, like, trying to break down the academic publishing is in it for the money and so on. And like, I want people to be able to read books. I want people to be able to, I want people to be able to understand these sorts of things. And I just want to make education much more available to people for a much cheaper price, and especially free, as we try to do on our channel. So the Open Logic project, it's open access, right? So they have a bunch of different books, and some of them get like super technical, but it's like amazing. And they're like textbooks. So they have propositional logic, they have modal logic in there, and like we're talking serious logic. Like anyway, I cannot recommend it highly enough. So yeah, I recommend that. So yeah, that's logic, and I think that takes us to the last part of our video.
Oh yeah, man, we made it. We did it. So, folks, that's like, those are books that will help you grow in your philosophical acumen.